very safe. Same stuff in the box after that though, the paperwork, the white Apple sticker, and the new braided USB-C cable. And then our iPhone 15 Pro Max here is the new natural titanium color. And I gotta say guys, I think this is gonna be the one to get. It's the best color in person in the hand. I'll talk more about why in a minute, but there you have it. The slightly new unboxing experience on iPhone 15s and 15 Pros. So by the time you see this, I've been testing these phones for about 6 days now. Not quite enough time for a review by my standards, but still plenty of time to give you some interesting thoughts, some things that I've picked up on, and some quirks. So first of all, these pale colors, I don't really know how else to say it. Like, this might be totally fine with you. I always get told everyone's gonna put a case on their phone, which they probably are. But hey, Apple did spend a ton of time and money making this new softer touch satin finish on the back, and some of us will carry our phones around with no case, so it's worth mentioning. For the Pro phones, there's actually an extra layer of interesting though, because they've switched that rail material, the part that you actually touch on the outside, from shiny stainless steel to brushed titanium. We've all heard about how much lighter it is, and it's something like 10% lighter, which is enough for me to notice and enjoy. But the other thing is, I thought the brushed finish would sort of eliminate fingerprints on the sides. Absolutely not. I was wrong about that. I mean, it's not as bad as stainless steel, but especially on these darker colors like the black or this blue, you can totally see fingerprints and sort of where your hand oils are marking up the sides of the phone. And then on top of that, this is not anodized like aluminum might be. This is the new PVD coating they talked about on stage, and it's only been a week here for me, and so I don't know exactly how well this will hold up over time, but what I do know is if you get a scratch deep enough into this coating, it's got to be the natural titanium color underneath, which is very light. And so that might look rough if you drop this phone with no case and get like a big gash on your dark colored phone and have light marks all over it. All of that to say, I do really think that this natural titanium or the light is going to be the better color to get on the Pros this year.
Okay, let's talk about the design. Right now, where we are with the iPhone 15 Pros is a high point. We've just come from a set of phones that were pretty, yes, but very heavy and not comfy, to a set of phones that are just as pretty but more comfortable thanks to the new contoured edges, much lighter thanks to the material swap to titanium, not to mention more practical thanks to having a matte finish all the way around. With the iPhone 14 Pro that I used to use, the fingerprinty stainless steel sides, the couple of marks I've got near my charging port from where I've, well, missed, and the dust in the mute slider are the only giveaways that this is a well-used phone. But with these, I mean, obviously we'll need about 3 months to say anything conclusively, but it feels like the combination of having both matte and brushed side rails should help to hide that. It's not the dream though, because even though the material does hide scratches better, it does look like it can be scratched easier. And also, fingerprints on these darker phones tend to show up as a light area, which means that around your buttons you tend to almost get this haloing effect from past fingerprints that you struggle to wipe away. They're not permanent marks, they'll come off straight away if you go in there with a cloth, but you can't be doing that every day, so you will notice it from time to time. Zooming out a little, I still think the most comfortable shape that a phone can be is pebble-like. I've asked my whole family, and every person agreed that the iPhone 11 Pro is more comfy to hold and use than the 15 Pro, but then I suppose that thing has its own set of issues because the curved nature of the phone introduces a bulge around the screen. And that's actually something the new phones do especially well. The bezels are really, really slim, and it's one of those things that, of course, you will get used to, the same way you get used to the acceleration of a new car or the sound quality of a great audio system, but then anytime you get a hint of perspective, like seeing anyone else's older iPhone, it does make you reappreciate what I think is a bit of a design feat. Okay, so I mentioned that cameras are something pretty special on these phones, and let's be very clear about something. What makes these cameras special is no one thing in isolation. It's not about the ultra-wide camera that lets in a bit more light, it's not—
Alright, first things first, this is the first iPhone with a Type-C port. So the one thing that you need to know is that the 15 Pro Max actually supports the faster Gen 3.2 standard compared to USB Gen 2 support on the 15 and the 15 Plus. But does that mean that you get faster charging cables inside the box? Well, no, the Type-C braided cable that you get inside the box of the Pro Max is also of Gen 2 standard only, so you will have to buy a Gen 3.2 supported cable separately. But one thing I was really happy to see is that you can now charge any one of these 15 series phones with any Android Type-C cable as well. And apart from that, you've also got reverse wired charging support on the Type-C port, and that's up to speeds of 4.5 watt. By the way, one of the things I really like about the Type-C support is that now I don't need a separate lightning cable in my car for the wired CarPlay support. I can use that same Type-C cable for Android Auto or CarPlay. And with the Pro series especially, since you've got support for faster USB standard, you can also directly connect it to an SSD and work on whatever project you're working on the phone itself. Apparently, it's been improved, but we'll check that out in the detailed review.
The iPhone 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max had insane battery for their respective sizes, but then the 14s were not as good, and they also seem to degrade faster over time. It could be the extra brightness of the screen putting more pressure on the battery and causing more heat on the inside, which can permanently degrade your cell. Whatever it was, Apple didn't really acknowledge or address any battery concerns, so it's not clear if any of those long-term effects will be present, but what I can say is that the iPhone 15 Pros are better for sure than the 14 Pros, with a bigger battery capacity, more mature software, and better heat dissipation, which should make that battery last longer over time. But as well as a camera test, there will also be a very detailed battery test alongside it, so there will be a lot to talk about there. I am slightly sad to see that the charging speed hasn't gone up, which would have been one of the main perks of a USB 3 port, but at least the phone does leverage some of the capability of USB-C with the ability to reverse charge your AirPods. The fact that your iPhone 15s can now deliver power through USB-C means that almost anything that you can plug this cable into, you can charge, which means that for the first time since switching to the iPhone like 4 years ago, I don't have to feel like I'm the battery leech in my friend group. I guess the main perk of iPhone being USB-C now is some semblance of stability.
Because one of the things that we noticed is with the Geekbench test, the single core score that we got is actually higher than that of the M2 chip inside this laptop. Well, that's just one metric. What this indicates is that this is a very, very powerful chip. You get an Antutu score of over 1.5 million. And more importantly, gaming is going to be fantastic on this because you've now got, hardware-enabled ray tracing. So one of the things that we recently noticed is that 3D Mark actually has a ray tracing benchmark as well. And so we tried that out on the 15 Pro Max, the 14 Pro, and the S23 Ultra with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 as well. And what we noticed was very, very interesting is that on the 15 Pro Max, we got the best stability with the A17 Pro, and more importantly, the max frame rate of 31 FPS as well. In comparison, the S23 Ultra with the 8 Gen 2 achieved 22 FPS, and the stability was not as good as the 15 Pro Max, but still there. This is very, very good to see, primarily because we are looking forward to console quality gamings on the 15 Pro Max and the 15 Pro series in general. So Death Stranding is coming, Assassin's Creed Mirage is coming, so I'm really excited for that. But I know that there is a lot of controversy and discussion around the fact that, well,
See, the way it works is the iPhone 15 Pros have a 48 megapixel main camera sensor. If you tap on this one-time zoom, it'll cycle between 3 different focal lengths, between 1x and 1.5x. This idea that no individual aspect is particularly groundbreaking or new, it's just the fact that it all comes together in the highest quality, lowest hassle way that I've ever seen, with, by the way, the smoothest operating version of the camera app that I've ever seen on a phone, all within like a 3 megabyte file. Now, because the camera is 48 megapixel and you're outputting images in 24 megapixel, you can, between 1x and 1.5x zoom, use different amounts of this full sensor to achieve a result that is still genuinely a 24 megapixel shot. And so on the bright side, when you take, let's say, a 35mm photo, it is more detailed than if you just took a 1x shot and zoomed in till it looked like a 35mm photo. But then the downside is that when you do this, you're not using the full extent of your sensor, and therefore the image quality isn't as high. I wouldn't say the degradation is noticeable, but it will be there. And it's just a bit icky to call this a 7-lens system, when really if you're going to do that, you could just add a stop at every single possible different magnification and then call it a 1000-lens camera system. As a feature, it's fine, it does the job, but unlike the way it's being presented, it is not the same as actually having 7 lenses. Right, now let's talk about the new zoom camera. So for the iPhone 15 Pro Max only, the 3x optical zoom lens camera has become a 5x optical zoom lens camera. And this is a bigger upgrade than it initially seems. They've not just taken the zoom camera that was already on the Pro and stuck a bigger lens on it. The Pro Max has a larger sensor and better stabilization than the regular Pro too. And let's be very clear, even though 5x zoom is not the highest magnification we've ever seen on a phone. By a long shot, this is still a very good quality 5x zoom camera, which means that in most lighting conditions, the shots look pretty good even at 10x. And the lens has so much natural foreground-background separation that oftentimes you don't even need to rely on portrait mode for that DSLR-like separation. And
what you do notice more actually visually is the slightly softer curves all the way around these phones. On these new phones, the edge of the front glass actually has a little bit of curve at the very edges. So it's a softer curve into the rail. Then the rail itself has softer curves than the totally sharp corners from last year. So I think it's a nice hybrid of making it just more comfortable in the hand with these curves, but still keeping the generally boxy look. Now, with USB-C on these phones, we already learned that you can just plug in a cable to charge an accessory, right? So it's no reverse wireless charging, but you can at least plug in a USB-C cable straight to AirPods or an Apple Watch MagSafe charger, whatever, and it will charge from your phone's battery. So that's already pretty interesting. But I decided it's worth learning all the rules and behaviors of plugging things into the iPhone 15s. So here they are. So if you plug in any older Lightning iPhone into a USB-C iPhone, regardless of the charge state, the USB-C iPhone will always give battery to the Lightning iPhone every single time, no matter what. Now, if you plug in another USB-C iPhone into your USB-C iPhone, it actually does a handshake where they talk to each other, figure out which one has the lower battery, and then the one with the higher stated charge goes, all right, I'm a battery bank, and I will start charging the one with the lower stated charge, all the way till you unplug it. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and it works pretty well. Then I decided to try a couple of Android phones and see if the same handshake happened. Basically what we found is if you plug into your friend's Android phone who has more battery than you, and that phone has USB PD, it will actually act like a battery bank. But if the phone doesn't have USB PD, which is a bunch actually right now, it's pretty inconsistent, and you could end up charging it, or it could end up charging you. Literally unplug and try it again. But if it has USB power delivery, it will actually do the same handshake that the iPhones do. It's only 4.5 watts out, so it's not huge. It's not gonna fast charge or anything. But it is ideal for accessories. You can literally use the cable in the box to charge up the new AirPods or whatever else you want to try. But yeah, you can rescue another smartphone in a pinch. So then, the new action button on the Pros.